In your lecture today, you talked about the concept of Ubuntu. And can you explain what Ubuntu is and how it applies to youth ministry?
It's an African concept that says I am because we are, and we are because I am, in the sense that as a result of you being the best you there is, then I can become, and I am the best I am that be. We are the best that we can be. And so it accepts responsibility and accountability for your life and life abundantly, and you're accepting and responsible for my life and life abundantly. And we share that all together. I do think that just in the sense of the nature of our economic system of capitalism and the way it has been applied and the way it has been historically used, in the sense it creates this individualism that is counteractive to the progression of community. And I think Ubuntu speaks to that whole kind of nature that we are as a result of each of us being. One of the examples I shared today was Dr. Borges, who used to be the chairman of the African American Studies Department at Brown, in one convocation talked about another as opposed to other. That we began to see each other as another version of ourselves, instead of the other, which seems some kind of stranger, some kind of distant, some kind of disjointed or disconnected kind of person. And as a result, when we live in this disconnectedness, then you can do whatever pleases you and what works well for you, and therefore could impact and does impact everybody else and other individuals differently. Whereas I see you as another version of me, that you're not so different, you're not different than me at all, just another version of me. And so it brings about what Christ says, that we can show love to ye one another. Yeah. I think it is critical and important that if we're going to do youth ministry cannot be trying to make them like us or to create them in a mold that pleases us, but allows them to become the best them that they can be, which makes us the best us we can be. Yeah. Also, I think this whole sense of the societal and the world that we live in that clamors for identity and space and respect and etc. There has to be this safe space so that I can work out who I am, so that I can be community and be part of community, and I can confidently take my stand with boldness and courage, and yet be prosperous without hindering you from being prosperous or having you to put you down in order for me to be prosperous. I think that's very much needed. And particularly as a person of the African diaspora, I think that is the natural understanding of who we are as a people. And as a result, once we get into our original intent, we can't do nothing but experience joy in life and life more abundantly. I think it is needed in our urban environment. It's particularly around crime and violence, and particularly experience in our communities here in America, that when I start seeing you as Ubuntu and me as Ubuntu, that I see you, I recognize you, I respect you, I understand you, you are another version of me, you are part of me, we can't exist without one another, then some things begin to click and question our own minds and our thoughts and our process that won't allow me to do some of that. I also think in other parts of the world, in Latin America, particularly in Colombia, the displacement in particular of Afro-Colombians from the Pacific coast because of the drug trade and the war and et cetera, that places them into urban cities where they are dropped in places that are foreign to them and they don't have the necessary support and et cetera, that causes the creation of addiction and causes the creation of crime, causes things of addiction, et cetera, because people have isolated them as people of the Pacific Coast, or those who are Afro-Cuban. They're not city people, and etc. And so they're isolated away, and they're all accused, and they're all seen on this microscope. I think the same thing is happening over Europe, where immigrants are coming from the Middle East and from North Africa, and etc. They're all isolated into one, and as a result, they become the other instead of another. And when people see themselves and they are perceived as the other, as strange, as a thug, or etc., then at some point it impacts who they are. That may not really be who they are. And so they never have the opportunity or the space to deconstruct and reconstruct and construct, to come into their own self-identity, defining themselves and driving their own narrative.
It strikes me that this is very countercultural in the United States, which prides itself on individualism, as you mentioned earlier in this conversation, and which says, I can pull myself up by my own bootstraps and I can do it all by myself. That really isolates people and communities from one another. And this is a message of Christianity and of grace that is very radical, and that then would lead to a lot of sense of collective responsibility for each other and tending to each other, which is that's a hard sell in some areas of our country, but so needed.
Yeah, and in particular, I think you're hitting right on the point, and where we need to have more candid and honest discussions about. I know it is a favorite phrase used a lot in the sense of this bootstraps, but if you are an individual and you don't have any boots, and so, and when you tell them that all you got to do is pull yourself up by your bootstraps, all you got to do is do this, and you can do that. But if I don't even have boots, then there obviously something in my mind says that there's something wrong with me, that I don't have boots, because this is the way you do it. You pull it up, but I don't have boots. And because there's something wrong with me, that means that the possibility of me changing my situation is impossible. That I can never amount to be anything or do anything because I don't even have any boots.
And doesn't that affect our sense of self?
And
that
so why should I try to be a part of community? Why should community or another even matter to me? Because I don't have boots. And I know that is a simplistic and but just think about youth in a community. In particular, one of the things that we got to talking about in the part of the question and answer period about sexuality. If I don't feel like I fit into the norm of and somehow me being abnormal, why would I even engage? Because I don't want you to know or to think or to come to find out that I'm abnormal, that I really don't have those kinds of feelings, and et cetera. And so whether or not that is legitimately who I am or not, I am forced into a space in which I am forced to identify, and therefore forced to be on the defensive about it, and forced to take a corner that puts me in direct opposition of the rest of the can put me in a direct opposition of the rest of the community. Not because of sexuality, but because I feel like I'm not admitted or can be admitted into community. And so sometimes I just think I'm the odd person out. My positions tend to be opposite of those of the norm. And so I never try to engage or never want to try to engage in the space because I cannot be accepted who I am, or I cannot even be in a space where I can tease out who I am.